And welcome back to the First and Goal podcast. My name is Lewis, and next to me, of course, is my beautiful co-host Laraib, as we are ready to break down an amazing week of NFL football, week 12 of the NFL season. Sorry for no episodes last week. It was just holidays, family coming into town, and of course, we had Thanksgiving last week, so it was a
And
tough
Brown
upload
Christmas.
schedule for us. Brown Christmas, of course, for those who don't know, Black Friday. But that's when my friend Laraib celebrates his form of Christmas. But so that's why we have been uploading, but now we have 2 weeks of football to break down. We're only going to break down this Sunday, but we have big takeaways from this entire weekend, including the games on Thanksgiving, all three of those. Tons of games to break down. But first, Laraib, let's look at those picks. I know we didn't go through the picks with y'all, but we
Um,
did them on our own. Laraib, break us down what happened.
yeah, I mean, back-to-back weeks, Lewis, you got me in both of them. Last week, it really came down to me picking Pittsburgh as my upset, and there was a tight game against the Bengals, but they couldn't get it done in the end. And then this week, we agreed on almost all of them, and the only ones that we had a real big dispute on was the Patriots Minnesota game on Thanksgiving, and that's what ended up getting you the win in back-to-back weeks. I know I haven't been too confident in my picks, but I'm hoping to get back on track later this week.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, that New England Minnesota game, you just asked me, you're like, oh, who are you going with again? And you already told me you were going New England. I was going hard New England going up to it, but I was thinking, like, it's in Minnesota. The Vikings are the better, more talented team. So I went with them, and my gut was right, even though all my head was kept telling me the Patriots. So it wasn't a bad pick. Tampa really screwed you over. I don't think we're going to talk about that team in today's episode, but wow, that game was awful. They just finding new ways to lose. Coming off a bye, I've never seen Tom Brady look that bad. So that was just crazy bad luck for you, Laura. And then my lock, we'll talk about him in a second here. Just couldn't get the job done. I guess I had more faith. But yeah, both our upsets didn't hit. Ultimately, it came down to one game, but I guarantee you next week we'll have a lot more disagreements. But, Larab, let's go ahead and move into our Seattle New Orleans corner of the week. I'll go ahead and start. Saints get shut out 13-0 in Santa Clara against the 49ers. 49ers, their offense was kind of, it wasn't as great as we know it can be with all those weapons. So the Saints, they were able to play some really good defense, holding the 49ers with all those weapons to 13 points. It sounds really good until you realize that you only put up a donut. You put up 0 points. And it was just, you had 4 red zone drives that accounted for 0 points, 2 fourth down, failures, 2 fumbles lost. And it was just, horrible penalties when you needed them the least. It was just timely, awful coaching decisions, personnel decisions, whenever, it would screw you over the most. This has been, and I've been saying this, I'd rather watch a bad team. I'd rather be a Texans fan where my team is just not as talented. But, at least I can look forward to the future. At least I can see my young guys develop than having just a stupid team. Right now, the Saints are a stupid team. We're last in the league in turnover differential. We're last in the league in penalties. It's just, we have the talent. We're 4th in the NFL in yards per game offensively. And defensively, we've turned a massive corner in holding our opponents. But it's just everything in between we're awful at. And that is a direct reflection of how a team is coached. And Dennis Allen, I'm usually never an advocate for firing a head coach after one season. I say always give them 2 seasons because when you're first in that building, you're trying to get everything down, trying to get everything But he's been in this building for 7 years, and it's just like frazzling to him. And then the post-game interviews where he just says things like, "Oh, I think we did everything we needed to do to win this game." No, you're wrong. You're wrong. And then just, I don't know. This team has been so infuriating all season. I'm so done with them, and yet they're gonna beat Tampa next week, and they're gonna try to pull me back in. But I am done. I'm out, out, out.
Well, Lewis, the NFC South playoff race is still wide open. And like you mentioned, you got
That's
some
the
key,
worst part.
you got
That's
some
the
key
worst
players
part.
back on defense this past week, and you held the 49ers to only 13 points. And so, like you mentioned, you have all the pieces. You just need somebody to put it all together. And some guys like Dennis Allen, this is his second stint as a head coach. They just aren't made to be head coaches, Lewis.
Right.
Nathaniel Hackett, Matt Rule, some guys, Josh McDaniels. And so, just some guys just aren't made to be head coaches. But moving on to my Seahawks, Lewis, a 30 or 34-40 barn burner over there in Seattle, high scoring affair that went into overtime. And we just couldn't get it done. And really, like you mentioned, you were telling me over this past weekend, is just that Seahawks rush defense. We weren't able to stop anybody. We weren't able to get any pressure on Derek Carr. And our offense puts up 34 points, but in key situations when we had the ball on our own 40-yard line with, a minute left in the game before overtime, we think we can pick up a first down, and then our offensive line gives up a huge sack. Geno Smith has an interception and a fumble, and our rushing attack was just horrible, Lewis. I think we had around 16 carries for 26 yards, Kenneth Walker. He had two, monster runs, for 14 and 15 yards, carrying guys in the end zone for touchdowns. But besides that, we really couldn't get anything going on the ground game. And so disappointing game in this one, it knocks us out of the playoff picture right for the moment, at least. And it's going to be really tough to get, to crawl back in. I think our best chance might be, one of these NFC East teams to fall up. We'll talk about that in a second. But for the Seahawks team, our youth is starting to show a little bit, especially on defense. We're giving up big plays here and there. Just our inexperience is coming through. And so it's going to take some time to build some rapport and get guys, fully integrated. But this was supposed to be a season, Lewis, where we were only supposed to win 4 games or less. And so, still looking at the bright side, of course, Denver keeps on losing. And so we have that, top 5 pick, hopefully. And, we'll see where we go from here next week when we're playing against a Rams team who's depleted on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, exactly. I think the biggest thing for y'all was early in the season. I mean, I told you about the rush defense. I said it has not been talked about that much, but it's been pretty porous all year. There was a game against the Buccaneers in Germany in which Rashad White was running all over y'all, and that was like, whoa, this guy should not be running all over the Seahawks. And then we were at the New Orleans game in which Taysom Hill just made those boys, and they were not men on the field. But I think the distressing thing about last week's game for y'all is at least you didn't have a great rush defense, but your pass rush was evident. Y'all did not get a pass rush against Derek Carr and that offensive line, which we've seen get abused a lot by other defenses. So that was one of the more distressing things for me, was just maybe it was just because they were running the ball so well that you wanted to just focus so much on the run that Derek Carr had all day to pass. Maybe that was the case, but I don't know. Seahawks need to get that fixed up. I think their offense is going to be fine. 34 points at home. That's expected. That should win you a game in most scenarios. It was just a great, honestly, just tip your hat to Josh Jacobs in this rushing attack. Josh McDaniels, 2 wins in a row. Maybe he's trying to prove us wrong, Laraib. No, he's not. All right, but let's move on to that NFC East that you were referring to, Laraib. Currently, the standings are the Eagles at the top of the division. They are standing at 10-1 with a huge win at home against the Packers. It was a close game, Laraib, but they got the job done when they needed to. They ran the ball extremely well. They had the most rushing yards in a single game ever since 1980 with 364 rushing yards. Jalen Hurts and, Miles Sanders both just accounting for 200 of that. They were amazing in that game, Laraib. And then, you move on, Dallas 8-3, beating the 7-4 New York Giants in New York, I want to say, or no, it was in Dallas on Thanksgiving. And then the Commanders pick up yet another win. They have won 3 games in a row now, beating Atlanta in a really close game. So at the moment, all 4 teams are in the playoff picture, Laraib. But out of these 4, which team do you think is the most fraudulent of this group?
Well, earlier on in the season, Lewis, we were giving this team its flowers. We said their head coach might be the coach of the year. But, after 2-game slide against the Lions and the Cowboys, I really think that the Giants are starting to come back down to earth, Lewis. We know that they lack the wide receiver weapons on the outside, and there's only so much that Saquon Barkley can do. And, it really came down to that loss that they had to the Lions 2 weeks ago. I know we didn't get to talk about that much, but that was just a really bad loss at home. And, even the week before that, they played a Texans team, which we know has been awful all season long. And that was also a really close game. And so, I feel like this Giants team, Daniel Jones, he's had a solid season. Of course, he's not turning the ball over as much. The defense is playing solid, but I think, you talk about the Eagles, that they're in. The Cowboys, they're solid across the board. This Commanders team has been playing really frisky. As soon as your boy Carson Wentz went out and they're getting some guys back on defense like Chase Young, hopefully next week, I feel like the Giants are the odd man out in this one.
I agree with you, Laraib. It just the Giants have done so well just running the ball, playing a smart brand of football. But against some of these higher caliber teams, including all the teams in their division, you have to be able to throw the ball. And they don't have the weapons and they don't have the quarterback to deliver the football in these tight games, as we saw against the Lions and the Cowboys when they're down against teams that can score on them. And they don't have much talent defensively either. They have a solid defense, a lot of solid players, but they have no, crazy pass rusher. There's no standout corner on the team, no playmaking safety. It's just a lot of really smart dudes who are well coached. But when it comes to these high powered offenses, you need superstars to make plays for you, and they don't have that. So whenever they're getting scored on and they're getting down in these games, and you can't rely on Saquon Barkley as much as you can, in a close game, then it's a really big struggle for them. And yeah, like you said, I think the Commanders, even though they're a game, back in the loss column, they play next week, and the Commanders are favorites at New York playing the Giants. So that tells you all you need to know about this Giants team and how much faith Vegas and the football community has in them, which, yeah, I don't think so. I think if there is a team to fall out of the playoff picture, I really do think, Laraib, that it's the New York Giants who fall out. Heineke, he's been playing very well. He's been playing a very, bad defensive schedule. Let's not give him all the credit in the world. Carson Wentz would be doing the same exact thing that Heineke's doing right now. He's injured, and I get it. You're going to run with the hot hand, but ultimately the higher ceiling will be Carson Wentz. But I get it. Commanders, we saw what you did with Sean Taylor. You just don't know how to run things well, but at least the football team is good. And Chase Young, yes, hopefully he does come back next week. And I think for the top two teams, there's no question. These teams are absolute locks. They are two of the top 5, top 10 teams in the entire NFL right now, in my opinion. Just a great blend of defense, offense, and two teams that are going to be very scary come playoff time.
Yeah, for sure, Lewis. But let's move on to one of our better segments at the First and Goal podcast, cap or no cap, Lewis. Bringing back this segment, I think let's start off with you asking me.
All right, Laraib. Well, so cap or no cap, after another impressive win from the Cincinnati Bengals, they are now on a 3-game winning streak and just beat the Tennessee Titans in Tennessee, a place where we know, those teams have played well. And now it seems like the Bengals kind of dominate Tennessee, beating them in Tennessee. As we know, that was where they beat them in the playoffs last year. After that impressive win, Laraib, and the Baltimore Ravens losing in a pretty pathetic way to the Jacksonville Jaguars on the road, do you think the Bengals are now the favorites to win the AFC North, Laraib?
Oh, if you were asking me which was the better team, Lewis, I think without question in my mind, it's the Cincinnati Bengals. But for what you're asking me, winning the AFC North, looking at the schedule, Lewis, I have to say cap that they will win the AFC North. Let me list off a couple of teams that the Bengals have to play still. The Chiefs, the Browns with the Deshaun Watson back, the Buccaneers, the Patriots, the Bills, and to finish off against the Ravens.
Jeez.
Meanwhile, the Ravens have to play the Broncos, the Steelers twice. They do have to play the Browns with Deshaun Watson, and then the Falcons. And they finish the season, of course, with the Bengals. And so you just look at the difference in the two schedules, Lewis. I think the Ravens, we say these games are easy, but they lose on the road to Jacksonville team who hasn't been playing very well. And so quite frankly, this is still a 50-50 race, where I think based on the schedule, I think the Ravens can get it done. But both these teams in the playoffs, Lewis, I'm still picking the Bengals over the Ravens any day.
Yeah, not going to lie, Laraib, I know we disagree a lot, but I agree with everything you just said. Do I think the Bengals are a much better team? Yes, but their schedule is just so brutal. Now, looking through their schedule in depth, they play the Chiefs this weekend at home. We're going to talk about that game, but I think that's a winnable game, but obviously a tough one. The Browns, it's at home. Yes, Deshaun Watson's back, but he's going to be figuring out the offense, and you just can't imagine he's going to be comfortable coming into the season in his second week, in Cincinnati with all those crazy fans. So that's going to be a tough game. And then, Tampa isn't really all that great. The Patriots, it is in New England, so it's going to be a tough one, but that's definitely a winnable one. And then Bills late in the season, and then finally against the Ravens. I said you're going to split against the Ravens, so you need to win that one. But Laraib, if they win 4 out of 2, they're 11 wins, they make the playoffs, no doubt. The Ravens, meanwhile, their schedule, I mean, it's just a team that, like, yes, I do think they're going to finish with a better record than the Bengals just because this schedule is so cupcake. But you just lost to the Jags. So this team is a team in disarray right now. Lamar Jackson is the second worst deep passing quarterback in the NFL, only above Zach Milfson. I mean, that's not a very high standard right there, Lamar. And I know he's been kind of have to carry this offense. Bateman goes down. J.K. Dobbins is injured. He has to do everything for this offense, but he's really not playing efficient right now. Then he goes on a tirade against a fan on Twitter. This is a team kind of in chaos right now, Laraib. So they can lose a game against a Denver or another team like that, just kind of slip up. Meanwhile, the Bengals are just going to be battle tested. And we'll see how this season ends. If the Ravens take care of business like they should win this division. But you're right. The Bengals are the better team.
Yeah, for sure, Lewis. It looks like this Ravens team could really use a new wideout, maybe some like OBJ. I know you'll talk about that situation in a little bit, Lewis, but let's move on to another fact or cap or no cap. After the 49ers have strung together a couple of wins, Lewis, we see Christian McCaffrey has been a great addition. Debo and George Kittle are been balling out. Fact or no cap, Lewis? Or cap or no cap, Lewis? The 49ers are the best team in the NFC right now.
I'm okay. On paper, no cap, they're the best team in the NFC. But I'm going to have to disagree, Laraib. I'm going to say cap in general. I don't think they are the best team in the NFC. Now, it's hard to argue that they're not. I get that. Their defense has been playing amazing. And yes, they just shut out the Saints, who had 4 red zone drives, and they played amazing defense all game long. You can't say anything, against them in that case. But I'll say this, and there's been a problem with them in the red zone this season. There's been a lot of these games and where they have all these offensive pieces, and they've only managed to score 13, 19. Like they popped off against Arizona last week, and Jimmy G's had an outstanding game. But in some of these wins, it's, 13 points, 22 points against the Chargers. They scored 31 against an awful Rams team. And then they only scored 23 and 14 against the Falcons and Chiefs, respectively. So it's like, I just want to see consistent offense. And now you lose Elijah Mitchell, who just came back from injury. Obviously, awful news for the team and awful news for Elijah. But that was, another reliable offense or option in the backfield. So now Christian McCaffrey has to go back to that workhorse running back system, which I don't know. Is he going to stay up? Is George Kittle going to remain healthy? We saw Debo get nicked up in that game against the Saints. So it's hard for me to put my faith into Jimmy Garoppolo and to this roster, in which I just do not trust this offense against some of the heavyweights in the NFC, in which I think the Eagles are the best team in the conference, Laraib.
Well, Lewis, I'm going to have to disagree. I really, really like this 49ers team. As much as I bleed the blue and green, go Hawks. This 49ers team, they are battle tested. They've been to Super Bowl, Lewis, and they have that, those caliber players on their team. We saw the Eagles last year against the Buccaneers. They just got steamrolled by Tampa Bay. And so, it's going to be some of those, inexperiences what's going to cost a team like that. The Cowboys, I know you really like them, but we've seen them slip up a couple times this season. And I will 100% agree with you with the 49ers team. The red zone offense really needs to, we know how much of an offensive guru Kyle Shanahan is, but he just hasn't been able to figure it out in the red zone. And of course, with going down with Mitchell, we'll see what they can do about that. Bring in, Davis Price. We'll see what he can do with McCaffrey. But I still really like this 49ers team up and down. I like their coaching. Jimmy G can get hot on any given day. And with the playmakers they have, I like them. And their experience, I like them better than any team in the NFC right now.
I don't know. I just think, like, when you think of playoff football, if you can't cash in the red zone, and we've seen the Eagles have been amazing in these short yard situations and just getting those first downs, punching it into the end zone, just really pushing their will onto other teams. And yes, the 49ers have an outstanding defense, but so did the Eagles. And if you can't convert in some of these red zone situations in which they just get too tricky, they try to do so much with all their different options on the field where it just gets confusing and it's too much motion. And there was a play in which Christian McCaffrey got wide open in the flat. Meanwhile, Jimmy G throws it into traffic to George Kittle and it gets knocked out. So they need to try to figure out how to simplify in the red zone for Jimmy G. And it's nitpicking. Yes, I know I'm nitpicking right now, but with a team of this caliber that you know how high their ceiling can be, they're not playing like it right now, and they haven't been. So I need them to start getting some consistent offensive performances going into the playoffs, and then maybe I'll change my mind on how this team operates, Laraib.
Yeah, for sure, Lewis.
All right, so let's move on to our next topic. Laraib, the Miami Dolphins currently sit atop the AFC East right now and pull off another impressive victory against the Texans. Yes, it's the Texans, but a good team puts away a bad team early and just says, that's how you know that a good team knows how to operate. So right now they sit atop the AFC East. Do you think that they can continue and end up winning this division, Laraib?
Lewis, yes, they can. In every single game that Tua has started and finished, this Dolphins team is undefeated, Lewis. And now they have a really big test coming up this week at the 49ers. And I know how much I was just raving about them in that one just a few seconds ago, Lewis. But I really like the Dolphins in this game. A big thing is they have a lead on the Bills, and they have a head-to-head matchup on them, and they'll play one more time this season. But I really like this Dolphins team. They give up. Their defense really hasn't been locked down this season, especially with all the guys they have in Xavier Howard and Byron Jones. You'd think they could play a little bit better. But the offense with Tua and Tyreek and Waddle, I think it's the top in the NFL right now, and it's really difficult to stop those guys.
I agree. They have been playing amazing football right now, but I do not think they can hold on to this division crown, Laraib. They still have two matches. They still have to play at Buffalo. They still have another tough game against the 49ers this upcoming week. And I'm looking at the Bills schedule right now, who I do think are going to win the division. They still play 2 games against the Patriots. And then they play a game against the Dolphins, or they play against the Jets at home and against the Bears. So they have 4 easy wins on their schedule left. Meanwhile, I don't see that on the Dolphins schedule as much, in which they still have some tough teams to play against. So I think the team I believe in more right now is the Dolphins because of how they've been playing. But this Bills team with their defense, they're definitely going to be able to get some of these wins together towards the end of the season. And I think Josh Allen's going to start heating up as the temperature goes down.
Well, I have to disagree. I think Josh Allen is starting to come down a little bit, Lewis. In the past couple of games, the Bills, they won both of them against the Browns and the Lions, but they've had to, crawl and scratch for every single yard in that one. We know about the Josh Allen UCL sprain, and he just hasn't looked the same in my opinion, Lewis. He's had some bad balls here and there, and I think the injury is really getting to him. I will say, the Dolphins have had a really easy schedule the past 5 games on the win streak they've been on against the Texans, the Browns, the Bears, the Lions, the Steelers. And so,
the Dolphins did also just lose their best offensive lineman in Teron Armstead, who's going to be out for a significant amount of time. So we know how great Tua is against, no pressure and finding his targets. But when that pressure starts to heat up, who knows it? Well, it'll be his biggest test next week, Laura. I'm sorry to cut you off, but that's one of the biggest things for me right now.
For sure. You're going to be in Santa Clara on 49ers 3:05 game. We'll see how they feel traveling from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast. And that's going to be a really big game. And I feel like, if they could win that one, I feel like they have a really, really great chance of winning that division. And like you said, you said the Patriots are 2 easy games for the Bills to finish the season on, but I have to disagree, Lewis. We know how Bill Belichick is in primetime. They've struggled this season. Here
I'm about to say, have they won a primetime game this season?
They've struggled here and there. But Mac Jones played well on Thanksgiving. They almost pulled that one out. And so don't count out that Bills team, or that Patriots team, as long as Bill Belichick is there. But I like the Miami Dolphins to win that division, Lewis.
All right, that's fair. I mean, I think the Dolphins are playing the best football, but with their schedule coming up, 3 road games in a row against the Bills, Chargers, and 49ers, that's a really tough, that's a prove it stretch right there. And if they get out of that 2-1 or potentially 3-0, then yeah, I'll be all on board with you. But if they get out of that 1-2 or 0-3, then I think you'll be on board with me. But we'll see how that goes, Larob.
All right, Lewis.
That's why I think the Bills are going to win the division.
All right, let me ask you our final question. Cap or no cap? The current playoff seedings in the NFC will be the same in 6 weeks.
I'm gonna say cap. And
Thank
I
you.
say that because here's how things are shaking out now. Right now, you have the Eagles at the 1 seed, Vikings at the 2 seed, Niners as the 3 seed, and the woeful Buccaneers are your 4 seed. Those are your division winners, so they will lock in home playoff game. Your 5th seed will be Dallas, 6th seed is the Giants, and 7th seed is the Commanders. That means the entire NFC East will be represented in the playoffs as it stands now. But like I said when we were discussing the NFC East earlier, I do not think the Giants are going to, survive this stretch. I think they're kind of been figured out. They're playing a ticky-tacky schedule, and they have 2 games against the Commanders remaining, a game against the Eagles, Vikings, and the Colts, and another game against the Eagles, in which games that all those teams I just mentioned, Larob, have better offenses. You can debate the Colts, but at least the Colts have, a superstar on the outside of Michael Pittman that the, Giants do not. So I think in all these games, they're going to face teams that have a better offense than them. And in this, season, I just don't think you're going to be able to keep up with these teams. So I do think the Giants fall out. But who sneaks in, Larob? Well, you have the Atlanta Falcons. You have the Detroit Lions, who have sneakily won a few games. But I will say that the Seattle Seahawks will take their place in the NFC playoff picture, Larob. What do you think?
Yeah, I have to agree, Lewis. The
I
Seahawks
figured.
giving up 40 points is not a good look on defense. But if we can button some things up, my boy Tariq Woolen, maybe he gets into the box and makes some tackles, big tackles on some running backs. And hopefully we can sneak in. Like you said, this Giants team is starting to reel a little bit after 2 losses in a row. And they still have to play the Eagles twice, like you mentioned, the Commanders twice. It's going to be a really tough schedule for them. Brian Dable is going to really have to, scheme up something spectacular for this offense to get some stuff going. But I don't think he'll be able to do it with
Yeah,
Daniel Jones at the helm.
meanwhile, Larob, y'all have a pretty easy schedule going forward. You still have games against the 49ers and the Chiefs, but you have 2 games against the woeful Rams, a game against the Panthers in Seattle, and then you play the Jets in Seattle. Games that you should win. So if you get out of this stretch 4-2, then you're sitting at 10 wins. I think that gets you into the playoffs in this NFC.
Yeah, hopefully it does, Lewis. But let's move on to our top 5 teams now. We're 2/3 of the way through the season, Lewis. Some of the pretenders are getting up to the top, and some of the the pretenders are moving down. The contenders are moving up. And so let me hear your top 5 teams as they stand right now, Lewis.
Top 5 teams as we stand right now, Larob. Number 1, no doubt about it, it's the Kansas City Chiefs. They had a tougher task than a lot of us thought against the Rams, but ultimately that was a game no one was watching. They took care of business as they should. 5-game winning streak, no doubt about it. Number 2, this is as of right now, people, all right? So don't go too crazy. But I have the Miami Dolphins, who are on a 5-game winning streak. They've been playing outstanding football. And, like I said, they have their huge test coming up against these next 3 opponents. That will determine whether or not they're still on this list or not. But we'll see what they're made out of coming up. But as of right now, they're playing like the second best team in football. Number 3, the Philadelphia Eagles. They have been number 3 for me for some time, just a little bit shuffling up top. I just think, they're playing closer games than we've seen earlier in the season. The loss to the Commanders opened a lot of eyes on that Monday night game, and then they had a close game against the Colts 2 weeks ago, and then this game against the Packers just kind of weirdly close towards the end. But rushing for that many yards against the Packers, just really playing well defense. Jordan Davis is going to come back, the elite run-stopping rookie that they drafted this season, so they're going to become better. And this is just a perfect December playoff team. And when teams have to go to Philadelphia in December, that just sounds like a nightmare. So they're my number 3 team. Number 4 is the 49ers on a 4-game winning streak. They've been playing outstanding football ever since they got McCaffrey. I just need to see that offense be a lot more consistent. And at number 5 is the Cincinnati Bengals for me, Rob. I don't know if you have this team in there, but winning 3 games in a row, including a very impressive win against Tennessee and that defense without Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase might be coming back this week. If not, he will be back the week after. But this offense has been just finding ways to win without Jamar Chase. Getting the run game going against Carolina, getting T. Higgins involved against Pittsburgh, and then just an overall team performance against the Titans last week. Samaje Perine has really shined as well with Joe Mixon missing time. So this is a team that's just figuring out ways to win. Joe Burrow is looking confident. He's looking, just really impressive right now after that shaky start to the season. So I think the Bengals are my 5th best team in the NFL.
Yeah, I will say on the Bengals, you mentioned Jamar Chase out and Joe Mixon. I think that was a really big thing missing from this past week. As as much as I like him to be on my fantasy team, Joe Mixon starting in there. Samaje Perine did an awesome job replacing him for this week at least. We know he got some great receiving work on the ground. He was really, really good against that Titans front seven. But I will have a little bit of different than you, Lewis. I have the Chiefs at the 1. Of course, they've just been balling out. I like the Eagles at 2. I know you have the Dolphins a little bit up there, but I really like this Eagles team to battle through some adversity. They were down 14-13 at some point in that Packers game Sunday night. And so to crawl back in, have that amazing performance through the ground is great to see. And at the number 3 spot of the 49ers, like I said, I really like this team to come out of the NFC. Just all around great team. Like you mentioned, red zone has to do some work. And of course, this team has battled injury all season long for the past couple of seasons, Lewis. And so you hope they can be healthy for the playoffs. And then at this 4 spot, I got the Miami Dolphins. Just how well they've been playing. 8-0 when Tua starts and finishes a game. The big test this week, we'll see, how them and the 49ers pan out on this list. And then at the number 5 spot, I'm going to go with the Dallas Cowboys. We both left off the Bills off of this list, Lewis, which was, really interesting. The Bills are not on here for either of us. I mean, Josh Allen, he's coming off of that high from early on in the season. And Patrick Mahomes has taken over that number 1 spot for the MVP. But, going back to the Cowboys, I think they had an awesome game on Thanksgiving. I know you were hesitant on them just because of their head coach. And how he's always looking at the Denny's menu on the sideline. But just the defense is just awesome. Dak was clicking with CeeDee Lamb. And Zeke and Tony Pollard just an outstanding 1-2 punch on the rushing attack. And so I really like this Cowboys team. We haven't seen them able to put something together, in the playoffs, but hopefully I think this could be, one of those years for them. And that is my top 5 teams, Lewis.
Yeah, I just think I trust Joe Burrow a lot more than I do Dak Prescott right now. Similar rosters. I really like what I've been seeing from Pollard and Lamb. But I would also take Mixon and Chase over that combo as well. I think you would too. And the defense has been stellar, like you mentioned. But against some of these NFC teams like the 49ers and Eagles who just pound that rock, those are going to be some really big challenges for this Dallas defense. But that'll do it for our top 5 teams of the week. And our final topic we will get into is Thursday night football. The Buffalo Bills traveling to New England to play the Patriots. Buffalo is favored by 5 on the road, Laraib. What are you thinking?
Well, I'm thinking this is going to be a lot closer than Vegas expects, in my opinion. We saw Mac Jones with limited weapons on Thanksgiving go out there against the Minnesota Vikings, and he had a stellar performance. I know a couple key penalties here and there, some big drops here and there, would really cost him in that game. But for the Bills, also, both these teams played on Thanksgiving last week, and so no rest differential in this one. 1 week for both teams. And I like the Bills in this one. I think it's going to be closer than expected, but I think Josh Allen can get it done against the Patriots defense, which got exposed last week by Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, I think I don't know. This is a tough one for me. I just don't trust this New England offense against this Bills defense. Bills secondary is starting to get a lot more healthy, and then that pass rush is really going to get to Mac Jones, which we saw affect him in the Jets game as well. That they only put up 3 points, and if it wasn't for that punt return from God, then they would have lost that game against the Jets, or tied in overtime because Zach Wilson was on the other side of the ball. So what am I saying? But I just don't really trust this offense to do much against this Bills defense. Yes, it's in New England, and we saw what happened last year with the 3 passes attempted and all the running they did against Buffalo. I think Buffalo remembers that game, and they put the whooping on New England in this game. So I'm going to go with the Bills. I don't think it's going to be that close, Rob. I think Josh Allen starts to figure it out, and they could not handle him in the rushing attack when they last played him in that playoff game. And I don't think they're going to be able to do it here. We've seen them get exposed by mobile quarterbacks all season, Laraib. Justin Fields, Lamar Jackson, you name it. They've been exposed. And I think if Josh Allen if he's good and he's in his bag in the running game, which, you don't need your elbow for that, then he'll be fine. I got the Bills in this one. I'm going to go 28 to New England 20.
Oh, yeah, interesting points from you, Lewis. I think it'll be a little bit lower scoring. We know how Bill Belichick can always plan on that defense. And so I like the Bills still on the road. This is going to be a big win for them, Lewis. It's tough to face this team one more time at home later on the season. But I like the Bills 26 to 23.
All right. And that'll do it for today's episode. As always, make sure you check our links in our description for all of our socials to stay updated on our posts and everything else. But anything else? You got anything for us, Laraib?
No, I think that's going to be the First and Goal podcast signing off.
Peace.